Hello everyone, welcome to Satsang. We apologize, but our internet connection is really giving us problems. So if it falls down again, then we are on Instagram. Let's wait here. Yes. In Instagram, the connection is much more stable. So let's make some silence first. Where is silence? Why is not silence possible? Despite all teachings, all pointings, the thirst. No matter the struggle or the abstraction, no continuous silence. If it is forced, it can be maintained a little bit, but eventually it gets interrupted. Why is that? What is the mystery? So today we have a very interesting subject that many find boring subject. So I've raised some questions previously, and for those of you who are standing in that point and asking yourselves, why doesn't the practice get deeper? Why isn't there any evolution in my spiritual process? Why do I not feel the life bursting? Why isn't there any guidance? Just different questions. Why isn't there bigger devotion? Why isn't there silence? Long-lasting silence? Why isn't there higher vibration? You see, there is a gesture from the Hindu culture, from yoga, that is this namaste or namaskar. And this which is used as a gesture, more or less something which is already something which is fashion-like in spiritual environments as a compliment or something. This gesture has a profound teaching in it. You see, because that is the image of how the inner part, the body-mind complex, what they are reflecting to this outer expression. So it has a very big teaching in it. But like everything else, it is just molding and appearing to be something. So it is being transformed in the outside and not reflecting what is inside. So I hear a lot of questions about techniques and all of this and the quest for more advanced teachings and the frustration of it giving just a little bit of fruits, just a little bit of peace, but nothing more. And there seems to be a surprise with it and the vision that something must be wrong with that teaching sometimes, or it's not for me. And there's this quest for the highest teaching, always the highest teaching. But usually this lack of spiritual growth is giving a big message. In some years back, some decades maybe, this moral conducts, ethics, and all of this was seen in religion as ways of good behavior, not of good nature. And that you had to behave in a certain way for others, in relation to others, and more or less there's no more reach into this. But that's not really the case. If you observe certain philosophies, these moral precepts, they come first of all. And these days, this is what is lacking in a big extent, in a very, very big extent. So the nature of the seeker of truth may be more spiritual. His spiritual aspirations may be there, but at the level of the body-mind complex, the corruption is big, very big. And that's no problem in itself, because it doesn't matter where you come from. If you go through the stages, if you walk the path, there's nothing that cannot be overcome. But when you think that what you have is already good enough and what you need is the highest, then you're being driven by blindness. And that is the biggest obstacle, because you cannot identify what is there that needs to be changed, transformed. So how will you be able to transform it? You won't. The highest the philosophy, the higher the moral standards the seeker must have. And we see this going for the highest philosophies just for laziness, to engage in spiritual practices, and greed, and vanity, of course. So those high standards, high spiritual standards, must become natural. The body-mind complex has to respond naturally from this level, from this higher level of standards, spiritual standards, no matter the consequences. It's not something that you can use when it's fitting and embrace the opposite when it's not fit, when it's not interesting, when there's something to lose. And there's no one that can really evaluate what is there in your intimacy, in your intimate space, what is really driving you. But you can observe it. You can see where are you basing your decisions, attitudes. And this will give you a feedback, a concrete notion of what needs to be worked. So the tests in the spiritual path, they come in a way to free you from these material investments, from these material, how do you say this? Materialistic tendencies, so that the highest standards may grow. those who come and are recognized as saints in this world, they are representing these qualities, emanating these qualities. And this is available for everybody. And it is interesting because seekers are always saying that, but we are divine. We already are the truth. Okay? And in asking, in reaching for, they are always standing for the highest. They want the highest spiritual experience, the highest intimate contact with God, everything. But when it comes to break these materialistic values, what is called sacrifices, usually they say exactly the opposite. They cannot do it, they are weak. They want the highest. They can everything. They are already divine. But when it's about letting go of these materialistic tendencies, of attachments, greeds, laziness, they are weak. They cannot do it. How to overcome weakness? I will get to that. First, it is very important to recognize this. You see, in the world, the values of the world, more or less its investments are rajasic, tamasic. And this is more or less enough just to illustrate a point. But God reunion, self-realization. You see, this attraction for the impersonal aspect of God is very big, not because of spiritual evolution. For some, maybe. For the majority, it's just a way to counter, to go around these human qualities that are there and the laziness that is there to work them. Laziness by one side and greed by the other, because the greed is so much greediness that they cannot work for it. They don't have the time to dedicate. And by the other point, there is laziness. So how can they work these things? So both things are pulling away from that which would really open the doors. And the biggest truth connecting the majority, the times that the world is going through, is that seekers of truth are not ready, are not suitable. And it's not that it is the end, but contrary to what you believe, that it's just something about blessing or just overcoming one or two things or just finding the right path or just finding the right practice. contrary to your belief. You have to work hard to become suitable for this. Materialism has corrupted the majority of these inner structures. Whatever good is there, whatever, how do you say this? Whatever attraction for the divine which is there is tainted by greed, by something that you imagine that you have to gain with it, and you have no legs to run. They are broken. The standards are low, low standards. And this blindness of expecting the highest and thinking that you are at that level, this is one of the most detrimental aspects, because you cannot look at yourself. You cannot see where you're standing. So how will you move from there? You see, in the old days, those mature seekers would look, for example, at Raja Yoga, Yam, Niyam, and by looking at it, they knew that it would take a long time to reflect those values naturally. And they would dedicate. These days, a seeker looks at that. It takes a lot of time if he is honest and sincere. So he tries to find another way. And the same, he will use, in that case, waste more or less, because nothing is ever wasted. But he will use his time trying to find it here, there, in that place, in the other place, everywhere, instead of fixing in that place and working in those things. He will use his time in this way, and you will find more or less nothing. More or less because if you find frustration, and if it is intense, and if you're a seeker of truth, then it can open some doors. If that wasn't really mature, then you just go back to the same old life. No doors got open. So if you pick up the spiritual high standards of compassion, truthfulness, etc., and etc., each time you want to embrace that and hold that, that will have a cost. Everything has a cost. Everything has a cost. Some cost you can evaluate immediately, others you cannot. So if because of a situation you turn your back into truth, it seems that there's no problem there. Nothing bad has happened. You have prevented an unpleasant situation, but you have compromised your nature. You have sunken deeper into the filth. And the way To see it is through the emptiness of your spiritual quest. Putting aside those moments that you feel more elevated and all of that, the absence of the spiritual fire, of guidance. The absence of spiritual growth, of realization. That is your way of measuring it. And we're not talking about the best intentions. That's not what we're talking about. Because if the intentions are not the best, then there's nothing to talk about. So these words are for those that have the best of the best of the best intentions. These teachings are available. There's no need for me to pointing them here. Yam and Yam, simple, basic teachings, very strong, very powerful teachings. They prepare the land for the seeds of the highest standards to sprout. And for those seekers that have this very strong spiritual nature, they can know what is devotion. They can sense these highest frequencies, but at a lower level, they are still compromised. And without taking care of that, usually what they do is just feed on that highest to maintain that lowest. Okay, so Hanuman, how to overcome weakness? Well, the spiritual path is designed for the seeker to overcome his weaknesses. To embrace a spiritual life, transitions have to be made. If you really want to grow spiritually, and you're not trying to overcome things, to adapt, and in those transitions, you will be exposed to your fears. It is like this at every point. Practicing meditation, you will be exposed to the physical weaknesses, to the emotional and mental weaknesses. The more you decide to embrace spirituality and turning your back to the world, the bigger the backlash will be. Lack of understanding from other people, that sense of being alone, no one to understand it. And this is there to create that stamina and to eradicate whatever weaknesses are there. People try to counter it, to go around it. They believe they are intelligent in this way, like in meditation. Should I put more pillows here to avoid this discomfort? But that discomfort is there to help you, to strengthen you. So countering it will not feel it, yes, but you will not grow. You won't become stronger. Weaknesses are just beliefs that you have about what is possible, impossible, about yourself and the world. And if you don't question your weaknesses, they are showing you a path, and they are saying, come through me. It is through here. Of course, fear will arise, will scream, will make you become motionless, petrified. But that is the path. And once you cross it, the expansion, the growth that comes, the vitality, will show you how you were just a prisoner of that idea. So these little weaknesses are just like little bits of water in the ground. If you cannot go over them, how will you cross the entire ocean? So each difficulty that is coming to you is preparing you for the next one. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You need to change your mindset. But if you're still allowing for anger, jealousy, laziness, all these things to be there, if you're not working to eradicate this, to establish love and compassion and devotion, then it is impossible. And the majority of the devotion that most seekers experience, it's not really a devotion to the divine, to God or the master or the higher self or the higher nature, whatever. It's devotion to their own ideas of the divine, of what they have to gain with it. If you are able to see this in yourself, you will have a chance. And for the seeker of truth, that's the only thing he needs. Not everybody goes through the same thing. Each one according to what kind of materialistic values are there corrupting, twisting that life force. So whatever belief is there, about weakness or whatever. It has to be tested, questioned. And it gets built up at every stage. In the beginning, you start working with the small weaknesses, and the spiritual practice, they will strengthen you also. So these philosophies, they are like not finding a good example, but more or less the highest the philosophy, the highest the spiritual standards have to be already in place. Mentally, intellectually, everything is possible. But for it to sprout, to grow, that is something else. What is called lower teachings, they are not lower teachings. They are blessings for those who don't have these higher standards yet. For them to start to grow them, grow something. And that will take it to the next level and the next level and the next level. So whatever path you're following, eventually, in that intimate space of perception, your intimacy, it must reflect these higher spiritual standards. What happens is, most of the time, in this outer expression, you tend to shape your reactions as possible, according to those standards, but innerly they are not there. And this happens because you want to appear like, for other reasons. So it has to go much deeper. So these words, you may see them as judgment or opportunity. I can guarantee you one thing. The emptiness in your spiritual path, the absence of realization, the absence of constant God communion, the absence of guidance, the absence of silence, its absence or just light episodes, they are giving you a strong message, very strong message. There's work to be done. That body-mind complex is not reflecting the higher standards. So for you that has strong aspirations, make a test. Pick up an essay about yam and niyam. Comprehensive study. Doesn't need to be very long, but well elaborated. And cross-check what is there, not what you appear to be, not what you want to show, but what is really there. And then you'll have an idea. If you send the seeds, no matter how good they are, on top of a cement, in the sun, it will not sprout. Okay, if there's any questions about this subject, you can send, or any other subject. Next satsang will be Sunday, 9 o'clock UTC -3 Brazilian time. Until then, observe this, reflect on this, if you really want to have a chance. People are so devoted to appear to be things that they miss the most important aspects. Okay, so until then, reflect, make it real for you. Watch.